So here's the dog, and I put it in my Procreate app because I can literally, like, if you're kind of like, what color is that? Yes, we know it's a gray dog, but every gray is a cousin of a color, right? You go to Home Depot, Lowe's, you look at all the paint swatches, every gray is underneath some sort of tangent of a color, right? So if I hold my finger down, I can say, look at all these different shades of gray, and it will pop up here on the color wheel. This one's a little like more orangey red based. Up here we have more of a orangey red. I still see like, yeah, I'm starting to get more into that pinky realm. Over here we have purple. Over here looks almost more blue. Yep. So it's a good way to kind of just feel it out. Now, do you have to do it like this? No. You could say, no, I want a pink dog, and that's the end. You can do whatever you want.
That's very cool.
It's so cool. It's really cool. And then you can have all the colors like bookmarked into like a palette with it.
I never knew that.
Oh, it's great. Especially when you're like, I don't know what color that is. You could just pinpoint it and see where it's relevant on the color wheel.
Oh, boy, that's great.
Yes. Hold your finger down. It doesn't work with the pencil. You have to use your finger for it. Okay. Let's start off by getting some black. Now, if you want to use black, that's fine, but I recommend infusing it with blue. I'm using ultramarine blue and a brown, so I have burnt sienna here. And I'm going to give that a little mix for my extreme dark. It's a matter of balancing the blue and the brown, so it's not too brown, but it's not too blue. I always end up making mine more blue, so I'm going to try to make it a little more brown today, so then maybe it will actually work out in my favor. But that is what the color I always start with making, because there's going to be a dark value in anything that we create, so we want to make sure that we have a decent amount of that. So I'm going to wipe my palette knife off. Notice I kept it in kind of clump form. Now, what other colors do we have? Now, I am lucky because I have my Portland Cool Gray and my Portland Warm Gray on my palette. All these colors are, this is literally just a grayish blue, okay? So how do I get that? You're gonna start with white. I'll mix more. Start with white. Add a little blue to it, ultramarine blue. If you're using phthalo blue today, or Prussian blue, you're gonna end up with a little bit more of a greener dog because it's a very green heavy blue, but ultramarine blue is a really nice red blue. So right now I have a very light blue. You could see comparatively to where I want to get to where I am now. So we have ultramarine and white. I'm going to take a little bit of brown to calm it down. Put that in your brain. Brown to calm it down. And give that a nice little mix. Okay, see how it's very similar. So it's a very light gray blue, and that's a color that you're going to want to mix. Now, of course, there's all those little nuances. There's ones that are a little more purpley blue. There's ones that are more darker, lighter. So we can make different variations of those. So whatever your concoction was, take it, add a little bit more white, or add a little bit more of its pigments to it. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my black I mixed up. Because guess what? This is brown and blue too. I'm going to add a little bit of some white to it. Just to make a shade of gray. It's a nice deep shade of gray. I like that. It's working nicely. Okay. I probably will need more, so I'm going to mix up a little bit more. Take some of that. It's always nice to mix up a little bit more of an adequate amount of your black because I always end up taking more from it. But if you are going to use black out of the tube, just infuse it with blue. And if you have brown as well, do brown as well. It's nice to have that triple concoction for my acrylic users for that. So I have dark, I have light, I have middle. We need some of that around the eye skin pinky purple and the lip color. So to get that, I'm going to take a little bit of some alizarin crimson, my dark red there, my very blue heavy red. If you add white to it, it makes a pink. I'm going to add a little white to it to make a pink, but of course the dog is not that pink. So we have to add some brown to calm it down. I'm going to gonna add a little bit of my black because it does have the brown in it. Maybe I'll grab a little more of my brown. So you're looking for like just like a mucky red. There you go. Now keep in mind, my palette is gray. This looks light against gray. This looks dark against gray. If you're working on a white palette or a white disposable palette sheet, your colors are going to look different. So don't question your colors if they're right or wrong. They might be right, more right than mine. I won't know until I get them on my canvas. Your canvas color might be a little different. Maybe you are working on a white canvas. Maybe you're working on a canvas that's toned yellow or purple, or in my case, I used a thinned down black acrylic to work on mine. It doesn't matter what you're working on because it's going to all be covered. It's just a matter of brain wise. I like to work on a tone because I like my lights to look light and my darks to look dark by comparison. But if you already started on a white canvas, that's fine. Totally okay. Especially since I didn't mention I was working on a toned canvas. Okay. A little bit of color here. Just added some white to that same mixture I had right here, that pinky mixture. The eyes, they're very, very yellow ochre. So I'm going to take some yellow ochre or raw sienna. You could add a little white to it to make it a little bit lighter. I like to use my white and yellow ochre, my pure yellow ochre or raw sienna, whichever. If you need a little bit of some cad yellow, you could stick that near it. And I like to just kind of have them separate, like a little Neapolitan of eyes over here. All right. I think we're gonna just start plopping some paint down. I think we're just about ready. One other color I want to make. This one's a very blue heavy gray, right? I'm gonna make a more like a brown taupe heavy gray. So let me just get rid of this first because I don't want this noise. Okay, there we go. Starting with white, I'm going to take a little bit of my raw sienna yellow ochre color, mix, mix, mix. Take a little smear of my black, mix that in. A little bit more of my brown. Brown and gray. They're like step siblings. One's from one realm and one's from the other realm. One's more of the blue heavy side, one's more of the brown heavy side. They're still both neutrals though, okay? So similar thing, similar value, one's browner, one's bluer, but the same mixtures, the same ingredients, just different ratios. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my canvas and I'm gonna go from there. You know, what's funny is I always try to pick horizontal pictures, and today I picked all vertical pictures. And you could barely see it because I used a light color to transfer on the dark, but it just backfired. So, but that's all right because I'm going to start by putting in an underpainting and then you're going to be able to see it all better anyway. So just all good. All right, I'm going to take my little brush, use a little bit of my turp. If you're using acrylic, you would use water, and I'm going to be using my black right here. I'm going to use a little bit of my mixture. Very blue heavy. See, I did it again. Add more brown into it. Okay, I want a very thin color because I just want to almost sketch in values. I don't want to really necessarily do too much with details yet. I just want to place in where there's going to be some darks. So all of my extreme darks, there's shadow under the ear here, putting that in first. Letting it fade on down. If you're a watercolorist, this is going to be very familiar to you. Nancy. The dark here. You can really start to see how my black is very blue heavy. I did try to add more brown to it. It's just always what I do. And you know why it is? Because my blue is a better brand of blue. It's like more of a better quality paint than my brown that I'm working with right now. So it just didn't have the strength. Here's my little in between lip. We have the little line of the mouth. We have our philtrum. I'm going to put in my nostril here, little nostril here. And it doesn't even have to be as dark as it's going to be. It's just, you know, we're sketching with now, instead of linear, we're sketching with tones because we don't see things like a coloring book. We draw them like a coloring book. But now we have to make them not look like a coloring book. So I'm going to put in my little eye there. It's going to look a little crazy because it's just blaringly eyeball. Over here, pupil. We have our little tear duct area. It goes up into that overhang of that eyelid zone that we talked about. Now, ideally, you would use a smaller brush for this. I just am obsessed with this brush. It's like my little angle brush. I do have a little guy ready to go, but yeah, because eyes are my favorite part. Oh, I can't wait to show you the eyes. I do them first. That's the best part. It's like eating your ice cream before you have to eat your vegetables. It's so exciting. Because like, I mean, if you don't get the eye right, then it's like, well, why bother continuing? You could always fix things, but still. A little eye here, a little dark. This is all pretty dark. And you can go as far with this or as minimal as you choose. You know, I've seen people do an entire whole really developed underpainting this way, and that's great. You do that, you know, if you want to. It's not always necessary, but it's nice sometimes to do that if you're trying to figure out, you know, the gist of, you know, what's where, especially if you're working with multiple subjects. Like the cow painting I'm working on right now, which I still have not posted. I gotta post that. There was a lot of subjects involved, and it was a little confusing. So if you do it very, you know, monochromatically this way without doing the color aspect, you're relying on the value. That's going to be important. It's going to help clarify things when you start to block it in with color. This is going to be in shadow. Sometimes I'm using almost a dry brush, but see how he's starting to come to life. He looks like he's had a lot of coffee. That's just because I didn't get in with the shading. He's like, he saw a squirrel. It's very, very alert looking right now. Okay, so at that point, I'm going to just kind of leave it, just very basic tones, lights and darks. Now we get to do the eye. So I have a small little round brush, and I'm going to come on in. I'm going to go a little on an angle so my hand doesn't get in the way. Like that. I'm going to do this guy here. So I'm going to use more opaque paint, so thicker paint. And I'm going to put in my dark first. The hard part is for me to paint around this phone camera so I can actually see what I'm doing. All right, so a good amount of dark there, right? Once I get that in, I'm going to start kind of, I don't want to use the word outline, but I'm going to use the word outline. I'm going to put in, you know, that little overhang that's there, that little underside of the eyelid. And I know you're getting a little bit of a shine. I'll put it up on an angle. So often. Tear duct. No tear duct there. Maybe if I come out a little, you'll be able to see. Is that less shiny? Maybe that's less shiny. We're gonna find out. We have the end of the iris here. So we have a little bit of the white of the eye, the end of the iris. And it's not even that dark. It's actually covered with a blue highlight. Those are the things I want you to start noticing, because the blue is what's gonna make your dog's eye or anyone's eye go from, you know, eyeball to, ooh, eyeball. Okay, so just restated my blacks with more of an opaque paint, cleaning my brush really well, drying my brush really well. Sometimes a lot of turp or water can get stuck in this thing. So you want to really just kind of hold it upright and let all that water or turp ooze out. Let's go in our little eye Neapolitan. Let there be light over here. And then you could do this step first if you wanted to. I just really like to do my darks first. If you're working in acrylic, it doesn't really matter, but oil, you might end up having it blend a little bit, but that's okay, because we don't need like a cookie cutter shape eye. We're gonna actually soften this a little bit anyhow. If your yellow is going in and it's just not really dark enough, which I feel mine is, I'm going to take a little bit of some burnt sienna. I'm just going to dapple that in. Same thing up here. It's going to be dark because that little lid's casting a shadow on top, right? I'm going to take a little bit of my brown, stick it up there. A little raw sienna or yellow ochre just to kind of connect the two worlds. Notice that the iris is not just one color. There's a glow happening. And now what I want to do is I'm just going to tap in between the pupil and the iris. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, 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 tap. This is the part that I really want you to spend time on because the rest is just some brush strokes. This is like the nitty gritty. Strong highlight, bam. Okay, I just used pure white for that. I'm going to use dirty white now. And I'm going to put that in the white part of the eye. So it's a little bit of pinky. It's a little bit of, I call it dirty because I just really didn't clean my brush that much. Maybe a little bit of that purple that you mixed up, just so it's light, but it's not white. The highlight is brighter than the white part of the eye. A little bit of blue, ultramarine and white, or if you have King's blue, that's a great option. Just put a little bit of that in there. Okay, so a little bit of blue that helped kind of soften up that transition between the end of the iris and the white part of the eye. I feel like I went a little too light, so I'm gonna go a hair darker up there. And there's a highlight that goes across the iris right here. It's so minimal. I'm going to use that first color I used, which is that light grayish blue. Portland cool gray works. Just a little something. Now, of course, my eye's kind of small. If you have a larger surface, then you're going to have an easier time doing all of this. But that is how we do our little eyeball in oil. Now I have to, or acrylic. I do have to do the same thing all over there. But before I go any further, there's one other step that I do to this eye, which I don't really see in the picture. I'm going to take some pure ultramarine blue. And ultramarine blue is a dark color, right? So I'm going to take it and I'm just going to put a little swatch. Maybe I'll lighten it up a little bit, especially so you can see it. A little swatch in the eye there. And it's so barely noticeable. Do you guys see that little? It's like a hair note lighter than the pupil, but it's right there. And I always put a little blob of blue in there just because it just makes everything look better. All right, now I'm going to do the other eye. The other eye does not have a lot of highlights. It's not the star of the show, so we don't have to spend too much time with it, but we do want to still make sure that it's proportional. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to put in my darks to begin with. All the way around. Then I'm going to take my eye colors again, but more dark. I don't really have much of this light. Maybe a little bit, but I'm going to start off with my darks this time instead of my light. Tap it around. We don't want flat. There's still life in shadows. A little bit over here. A little bit of light. I used the light that I did there, but I just did one swoop. It's not going to remain that light. Maybe a little dash of my blue trick. Oop, that's too light. You could really see how much it's too light when it's surrounded by dark. Okay. Now, when I move on from this eye, do a little overhang, even though it's in shadow, there's still going to be a little shadow from the eyelid, a little darkness up here. Okay. So when I move from the eyes, I always tackle the nose next because that's important. After the nose, if the mouth is open, then I tackle the nose or the tongue. But this one's no tongue, so don't have to worry about that. But the nose is important. So once again, starting with the darks opaquely. Get that nice dark, dark cave in. Plop it on there. Do the other side too while I'm at it. The nose I kind of treat the same, not like separate eyes. I just treat them the same. Remember that your eyes have to be on the same angle as the nostrils. Philtrum. And then from the philtrum, I see that dark kind of radiating out over here. It's going to kind of trickle up a little bit. And sometimes I just put some dark, whatever's remnants on my brush and just intensify that kind of vibe of the underpainting simply because I have it on my brush and I know it's going to be dark anyhow, but I can overlap with other colors. I know it's not going to be this exact color. All right, wash and dry. We have a lovely little light purpley white highlight here. So get that highlight in. Now my highlight looks almost like the same value as my canvas. So you might not be able to see it as clearly until I get some of these other colors in around it. So I'm just gonna get that in. That was that first color I mixed up, that light bluish gray. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of my purple, a little bit of that pink I mixed up. Sometimes the color looks pink on the palette and it just doesn't look pink enough on the canvas. And that could be many things. It could be the colors that surround it. It could be you not cleaning your brush a lot. That happens to me. But what I do is I just go in with a little bit more light on my brush, almost a pure white, and I just mix it directly on the canvas. Now, if you're working acrylic, you just have to do that a little bit quicker. Dabble, dabble to get that texture. Now, ideally, when I'm doing a portrait for someone, I do it in several layers. I do it like a magical 3 layers if the world is cooperating with me. So I do a plop, then I do a more refined layer. And I have actually a plop here that I have to do for someone, and I'll show it with you. I haven't done the layer on it first, but I'm going to try to treat the nose and the eyes very detailed today, just since I can't do a second layer on it today. It's oil and that's just what happens. A little bit of reflected light on this nostril over here. Use some of my light pink tone just to kind of get it in. I overdo the light sometimes because I know when I tap in with my dark, it's going to deplete it. Darker colors are stronger than lighter colors. I'm going to tap, 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 wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. See, now it's already diffused. Don't have it anymore. All right. It's nice to use a little round brush for this because you could literally just tap your brush. See how I'm just dancing it up and down? And you can get that texture of that nose really easily. Okay, lots of little wiggles there. Now the rest of our dog, I'm going to use a bigger brush for. These are the only areas I use my littler brush for because they're little sections, you know, we need some details with all that. So we want to be a little bit more picky with it. Okay, wash and dry. I'm going to use my angle brush again. Now for me, this brush is big for this particular subject because it's the smaller size. So it's about the size of a nostril. You don't have to use this. You use a brush, whatever you feel is comfortable. But I'm going to go ahead and start letting there be light because I'm working on a kind of a darker surface. I'm going to actually start with the light today. Grab some nice light. It's not white. It's a little bit of white and that lighter color that I mixed up, that light bluish gray. I'm following where I kind of put in some of those little markings before, just so I have that light mapped in. Oh, I forgot to do the lip. I should have did the lip with it. There was something I was forgetting. A little bit of light here going around our muzzle zone, bridge of the nose. So I'm treating it as just without fur at the moment, because there's going to be a time and a place for fur suggestion on a short-haired animal. I'm going to go a little bit darker now. I'm not washing my brush though. When I grab my dark, and since I have my light already on my brush, I am almost creating like a middle value. So I'm mindful of that. If you're just kind of grabbing colors just because, then that's not going to end well. Always want to know what's on your brush, and will it work to your advantage for what you're trying to do? This whole muzzle area is nice and dark. Now, if you're working on a white canvas, you have the benefit of having that light background already behind you, which is great because that's going to help you see your tones for what they need to be. I always try to get in my values of my background at some point in the first kind of time crunch. And we have dark, we have light. I could even play up my light even more against our little whisker zone. I'm starting to create those lines just by doing strokes. I think of your brush as almost like combing your paint, your animal, right? Like you're brushing the paint strokes, the fur, in the direction that they would be growing. So here I'm noticing the brush, the hairs go this way. So therefore my brush stroke will go that way. Sometimes if the dog has some longer hair, I'll turn my brush so it's more like linear. All right, I'm getting into our toning area here. Now I did put a base down, right? But I'm going very lightly on top of it because it's already pretty much dry because I used a lot of turf with it. It's pretty, you know, able to be dried, layered on top. Now with acrylic, yours would be as well. I could always go back in and add dark a little bit, maybe a little bit of my purple, maybe a little bit of my black in the mix, because since I have this light color down, it will blend with it. And for my acrylic users, you would do the same. It would blend as long as it is still wet. Just try to be mindful of that bone structure. There's like these subtle little things, like we're gonna call this a cheekbone over here. That little cheekbone. A little bit of light here. If you end up not covering your canvas all the way, sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. That's another reason why I always try to work on a surface that is a color. Because if I do miss a spot, or if I don't fill it in all the way and I feel like it's working, then that's great. I mean, the color behind it works to my advantage. All right, going into the shadowed world up here now. I have to go around my eye fairly easily. I'm going to switch to my little brush for the time being. I'm going to go back to my little pinky color. A little pink, a little bit of purple. I have to put that little extension of that tear duct in. It's pink, it's lavender, it's all those light colors, periwinkle-esque. And it looks lighter because we have the dark next to it. So there's a little bit of light there. There's a little bit of light on the other side. Might trickle a little down. There might be a little ridge from the eyelid. You can see it there. That's very barely noticeable, but I'm going to make it look more noticeable now by putting dark next to it. Okay, put a little dark above it, and now it stands out a little bit more for you. Think about how our eyes are in our head. The same thing here. We got to create like a little cavern. Not as much of a cavern as a human eye, but still in our eye, still in our head. In this case, the dog's head. little dark there, a little dark there. I'm going to go back in with my light. Now the top of the head is a little bit more warmer, a little bit more browner tones up here. So I'm going to go in with that browner. Remember that last color I mixed up? That was similar to the gray, but warmer toned. It had more brown in it. Similar color to the background. But once I get that background in, it's going to look instantly not the same color. It's a little darker. Tap, tap, tap. I always start with the face area because that's the part that is, you know, very crucial. It's important. All right, a little bit of dark here. Now we're going to move to our chin, lip, and ear. Then you'll see the magic of the background. That's my second favorite part. Who would think that a background would be that exciting? It really is, though. Like when I put the background in behind that pastel dog I just showed you, like it was like, ooh, it's a big reveal. It makes so many colors stand out. It makes so many values stand out. And that's why it's so important to get your value, your color, your background pretty on point. Just gonna get this to be dark since I have it on my brush. Soften this edge. It doesn't have to be a cookie cutter crisp edge. Your eye will go to soft edges after they go to hard edges. So if you want your viewer's eye to really go to something, you want most contrast, you want crisp edges. Like I might want to intensify this dark a little bit more here. And I could even pull in some lines to show maybe some of these little individual hairs, but I will go back into that in a little bit. Chin, it's all pretty dark. There's a little bit of light here and there, but it's only light because it's next to dark. Only reason it looks light is because it's next to a dark. Okay, we're gonna get our little lip in. That pinky color, lock it in. Solid pink, black will cover it easily. Dark line right here. A little dark on the underside of the lip. Tap, tap, tap. Wash and dry. Get a little bit of light back in for a little around the lip light. Now over the lip, there's hairs, okay? And I'm gonna tackle that separately. That comes with all like the little things. We're gonna put in this little far ear. And then we got our big ear over here. Get this in, get this in. I have it on my brush. It's that nice brown tone. So I'm just gonna get that in. Starting to come out. And I might just kind of leave it as a floating head. I don't think I need to necessarily go all the way down, especially for a demo sake. But the ear, there's all those little veins and whatnot. You can put those in, but once again, you don't have to put them in right now. So we have this little swoopy curve. I'm gonna put that in with light. I'm gonna go in with my light again over here. So just like how I started with my face, I already have the underpainting in. I'm going to start with the light. We have that little fold thing in the ear. I don't know what it's called, but it's adorable. Cats have it too. Lightly brushing over where my underpainting was because I could utilize that. Say, hey, you know what? I did all that work. It could help me out. Or you could paint it opaquely. When all else fails, just paint over it. Nice light down here. Common thing that people do is they make everything just almost 3 values, and that's great. You know, I limited myself with like the amount of things that I mixed up, but when I blend, I kind of leave half tones and little things that are created. So that's one thing also that you can be aware of is, you know, when you're working, take a black and white picture of your artwork, take a black and white picture of your reference. You know, if you want me to send this picture in black and white, I can, or you could take a picture of it in black and white. Unless you're working on it virtually, then you can duplicate it and then make it black and white. But either way, whether you're working with it on an iPad or, you know, physically, just take a picture of it in black and white. Big difference. You'll be able to see all the values that are working for you or that are maybe non-existent and you thought that they were there and they just aren't, and you have to you got to fix it. There we go. Okay. A couple little suggestions of these veins. A little bit of dark here. I'm going to follow that up. I'm using my pure black because it has all this dark already, or all this light paint, and it's wet, so I can literally just graze my dark over it and it is not going to do anything bad. It's just going to kind of disappear the more I tap it. A couple little highlights to our vein. So I put that strong in, dry my brush, tap it out, tap, tap, soften. Just kind of wiggle your brush lightly over it so it doesn't read as blaringly like there's a worm or something sitting on his ear. Less is more. Okay. Now that I have all of that in, now we're going to just throw in something on his neck here, and then I'm going to do the background. Little things here. It could be a little darker. I'm constantly squinting my eyes. If you're not squinting your eyes, you're going to hear from me later saying, oh, this has to be darker. This has to be darker. Oh, my dog wants to come in. Okay, and one other couple little strokes here. I see something going on. Stroke wise, it's still dark. Something here, maybe a little bit of some light that travels down. There we go. Okay, now that I have all that in, I'm gonna get some big brush and I'm gonna do the background. I'm just going to use like a dirty-esque white. Let me let your dog in so she's the baby. She wants to be part of the animal workshop. Okay, now I have a larger angle brush here. I'm just going to dip it a little bit in my medium. I'm going to use some white, which honestly is kind of more of a dirty white, but that's the job. So I always find it's easier for me to kind of come in from the right. So I'll move this. See how instantly that dog is now dark. And I'm just treating it a little bit more transparent just because it's easier to get it on there. No reasons. You can take your time to do it more opaque. Around. So I'm not really outlining it with a line. I'm kind of just outlining it with like a, well, it's kind of like a thick line, I guess, if you have to think of it like a line. What do you want, dog? What do you want? Don't bark at me. Shh. All right, so now by having that light on, wow, what a difference, right? I could even play up the lights on my dog. Thought they were light enough, but apparently now they're not. And I could continue that around the whole thing. But I do want to show you some hairs though. So usually, like I said, I do this when the layer is done. But with a short haired dog, you kind of want to pick and choose where you put them. So there's things like I was going to say nostril hairs, like muzzle hairs. I would put in the little dots and whatnot to go with the flow of the lines that are there. But I never leave them just like that. I put them in, then I take a dry brush and I just kind of tap. So they're there, but they're not there. They're softened. And then I could go in with a very thin brush. I don't know if this brush is thin enough. Let's see. I'm scared. Ah. This is not the brush I normally use. I always have to hold my breath. I get scared. It's easy. Now this is like the most stressful part. So I'm going to take my rigger brush. I'm going to fill it with a little bit of paint, and we're just going to kind of see if this makes enough of a line. So a little bit of medium and a little bit of fluid, so water or turf. Okay, that's better. That little tiny line. You can barely see it, but you don't really want the focus to be on these whiskers. Let's see. Let's do another one. Okay, so that one's pretty good too. However, whenever they sock it back into the face, it's always so blunt and large. So I take a brush and I just dab it. Now it's soft. Dab it. Now it's soft. So that's how I create it. And then I just dab where it would be fixated in. Now around the eye, I like to do little lines too. So I can use my little brush and I can just literally, I see maybe some lines over here. So I'm going to do how the hair grows. So the hair goes out this direction. That's too thick. Gentle touch. You're going to have a thinner line. I got to do it with my rigger brush. My rigger brush is my go-to line maker. So little tiny lines around the eyes, little tiny lines maybe around the lips, which I will also do. There's going to be some light lines that kind of come in. Let me go a little bit lighter with this so you can see. They're so minuscule, like it's tiny little things. Maybe even a little bit here. I always do it around the eyes though, because the eyes are the focal point, in my opinion. I feel like they should be the stars of the show. So I will go in with a little bit of hair, but mainly when it's dry, because they'll go on a lot easier when it's dry. Okay, but you can start to see how just here is starting to get a little bit more texture, whereas elsewhere is, you know, the backup singer. The eyes and the nose are the stars of the show to me. Around the lip, same thing. You want to make sure your lip is done because you're going to drag some of this hair on top of it. So little tiny lines coming on down, block that lip. Where they start, I do the same thing I do with the whiskers. I just tap them so they're softened into the existing hair. Come down from this little lower lip into the dark neck, make it stand out a little bit more. Same thing over here, couple little lines. We don't want that lip to look like it's just like skin, you know, it's a furry lip. Sometimes I just take a brush that has a little medium on it and just drag whatever color it is outwards. So now we're starting to get a little bit more fur texture. Same thing here, we have this little like moly thing that needs to be a little furrier. All those little, I think mine's a little long. He's an old man, it's okay. But anyway, so that is kind of, you know, how to plop a short hair dog in oil. I'm going to continue the white elsewhere, but I did just want to get that in. So really that background makes such a huge difference, and I'm going to probably want to up my highlights a little bit more as well. And once I plop that in, I'll send a picture of this to you so you have it, so you can look at it a little bit more clearly, because you'll be able to see it better on an email photo versus a screen Zoom right now. So I'm gonna pause. Are there any questions with like plopping? No? Okay.